Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today, we are going to be tackling womanhood,
Oh, yeah.
which is a big one. We're going to be looking at this really fascinating source
Oh,
called The Essence of Being a Woman. It really goes through a bunch of different aspects of womanhood, sort of like a
yeah.
historical lens, cultural, biological, psychological.
It does. And, it kind of blew me away how it's both celebratory of
Yeah.
like all these amazing things women have accomplished, but also it's forward looking.
Yeah.
It doesn't shy away from the challenges
No, it doesn't.
that are still ahead.
It really doesn't. And actually, speaking of history,
Yeah.
one of the first things it does is it takes us back in
Mm.
time
Oh,
and looks at how women's roles have evolved over centuries.
okay.
And I was floored to learn that some ancient societies were actually matriarchal.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mind bender, right?
Yeah.
We just sort of assume, oh, yeah, men have always been in charge
Always.
since the dawn of time.
Right.
But that's not necessarily true.
No.
The source actually uses the example of the Minoans,
Okay.
and they had women in significant positions of power. But what's really cool here
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
it wasn't just, women lording it over men. It's that they often had a more balanced approach to leadership where both genders were kind of contributing.
Right. It wasn't just about flipping it
Right, yeah.
and making it the opposite. It
Yeah.
was about recognizing that there are these different structures and that some of them were more
Egalitarian.
egalitarian.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. But then, of course, not all societies were like that.
No, absolutely not.
The source talks about the rise of those patriarchal systems, especially in ancient Greece and Rome,
Right. Yeah.
and how that really kind of changed things for women.
Totally. And, even within those societies,
Yeah.
the source points out there were differences.
Yeah.
Like in Athens, for instance, women were largely confined to the home. While in Sparta, they had more freedom managing estates and even doing physical training.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
But it wasn't even monolithic
Right.
within those patriarchal systems.
Right.
The structure,
Yeah.
the societal structure really impacted their lives.
That's so interesting how these echoes of the past still resonate today.
Oh, totally.
Even in the Middle Ages, the source talks about how a woman's experience was really dependent on her social standing.
Yeah.
So it contrasts the influence of someone like Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was a powerful queen, with the hardships faced by women in the peasant class.
Right. It reminds us that it's not just gender
Yeah.
that defines a woman's life.
Right.
It's also social class, economic conditions, cultural norms,
Yeah.
all of that.
All of that plays into it.
Mm.
And then moving into the 19th and 20th centuries,
Yeah.
we really see things starting to shift
Yeah.
with the women's rights movement.
The source talks about specifically the suffrage movement
Yes.
and, incredible people like
Yes. Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Anthony.
And Sojourner Truth.
Sojourner Truth, yes.
And it's important to remember that fight for the vote wasn't just about, going and putting a piece of paper in a box.
Well, it was so much more than that.
It was about, recognition,
Yeah,
having a voice, actually being able to have a say
right.
in decisions that affected their lives.
Totally. And that fight continues today
Oh, yeah.
in many ways.
Any forms.
The source even points out something called CEDA.
Oh, yeah, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women.
Okay, so
It's a mouthful.
break that down for us.
Yeah, so basically it was adopted by the United Nations in 1979, and it's essentially an international Bill of Rights for women.
Wow.
But what's really cool about CEDA
Yeah.
is that it goes beyond just the legal stuff.
Okay.
It talks about discrimination in every area of life, whether it's education or health or jobs or politics.
So it's
directed
really
at
comprehensive.
Comprehensive, yeah.
Yeah, it's a framework for actually achieving gender equality.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And it's not just international agreements. We've seen powerful movements like the #MeToo movement
Yeah, absolutely.
that have
Yeah.
brought global attention to these issues.
And they've been so instrumental in shifting, cultural norms.
Right.
And holding people accountable.
Yeah, it's like this real...
Individuals, institutions, everyone.
Yeah, it's like a reckoning, I feel like.
Totally. It's about changing laws and mindsets.
Absolutely, but it's not just about the struggles.
Wow.
The source also celebrates how differently womanhood is celebrated
Yeah.
across different cultures.
I love that part of the source.
I do too.
It's so fascinating.
Like it talks about Japan,
Uh-huh.
where you have that very traditional image of like the Yamato Nadeshiko, who's like embodies grace, modesty, refinement.
Right.
But then at the same time, you have modern Japanese women who are highly educated and making waves.
Exactly. And it's not about like rejecting one or the other.
Right.
They kind of exist side by side.
Right.
It challenges this Western idea that there's like only one way to
Yeah.
be a woman.
Totally. And we see a similar thing in India, right? Where they celebrate the feminine divine in festivals like Navratri. But also there's this huge movement for women's education and equal opportunity.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see how it plays out differently
Yes.
in these different places.
And even in the Middle East, where often family values are very much tied with womanhood,
Yeah.
you see in a place like Saudi Arabia, which we think of as very traditional,
Yeah.
women are gaining ground in education and government.
It's a good reminder that change can happen anywhere.
Yeah,
And often it's women who are leading the way.
it is. It is. It is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've talked about history and culture. What about the science of it all?
Okay, let's get into it.
The source dives into the biological aspects of being female,
Right.
starting with the basics. XX chromosomes.
The building blocks.
Yes. I remember learning about it in school, but it's fascinating to revisit it all.
Well, and what's important here is that, those XX chromosomes, they set the stage.
Yes.
Right. So they lead to the development of ovaries,
Yeah.
which then produce estrogen and progesterone, these powerful hormones
Right.
that influence everything, physical development, reproductive functions.
Oh, hormones.
They get blamed for a lot,
They do.
but they're really amazing.
They are. It's like this dance between our biology and our psychology.
Absolutely.
But one thing the source makes really clear is the distinction
Yeah.
between biological sex and gender identity.
Right. It's not as simple as just XX and XY.
Right.
So the source acknowledges that gender identity is its own thing.
Okay.
It's a deeply personal sense of self that might not always align with the biology.
That adds like a whole nother layer
It
of
does.
understanding it.
I
It's
mean-
not just biology. It's about how we see ourselves, how we define our own womanhood.
And how all of that interacts with the world around us.
Absolutely. It's like this complex landscape that we're all navigating.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of navigating, let's dive into the female psyche.
Okay. I like it.
So the source explores some of the psychological traits
Okay.
that are commonly associated with women, starting with empathy and compassion.
And there's some really interesting research
Okay.
that suggests that there might be a link
Mm.
between those traits and higher levels of oxytocin.
What's oxytocin?
Well, it's a hormone that's often called the love hormone.
Oh, I like that.
But of course, social conditioning probably plays a role too.
Right. So it's both
Nature and nurture.
nature and nurture.
Back to that.
Back to that. But the source also highlights
Mhm.
other strengths like communication skills, multitasking abilities, being organized.
Oh, yeah.
And
Like, think about the traditional roles that women have often held.
yeah.
They're juggling multiple responsibilities,
Ugh.
nurturing relationships, keeping things running smoothly.
They've been
But it's
training for multitasking.
Yeah, I love that. Training for multitasking.
Yeah.
But, we have to be careful.
Yeah.
Because the source isn't suggesting that these are exclusive to women.
Right, exactly.
It's about recognizing patterns and tendencies.
Not stereotypes.
Yes, and men can be just as empathetic and nurturing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not a competition.
Nope. We all have our strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of strengths,
Okay.
the source dives into two that I think are super important for navigating life's ups and downs.
Okay, which ones?
Emotional intelligence
Okay.
and resilience.
So those are good ones.
Right. It's like having this superpower
Care
to understand and manage your emotions.
and connect with others on a deeper level.
Absolutely.
Emotional intelligence is so powerful.
It is.
Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills.
It's a lot.
It is. It's a lot.
And then there's resilience,
yeah.
that amazing ability to bounce back from adversity.
And life throws a lot at us. It really does.
But the source points out there are a lot of factors
Mm-hmm.
that contribute to that ability to be resilient,
Yeah, like what?
like adaptability,
Hmm.
having a good support network,
Yeah.
positive mindset, coping strategies,
Right.
finding your purpose and meaning,
Finding your purpose and meaning.
like a whole toolbox
Yeah.
of resources.
Yeah. I love that. A toolbox.
And women historically, I mean, they face some pretty big challenges.
Oh, yeah.
So they need that toolbox.
They need that toolbox. They need those tools. And speaking of the many roles that women play,
Oh, yeah.
that's actually what we're going to explore next.
Okay, we're ready.
But before we do,
Okay.
we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And we will be right back
Sounds good.
to continue our deep dive into the essence of being a woman.
Yeah, I'll be here. All right, so we're diving back into the many roles that women play throughout their lives. And, I think what's really refreshing about this source is that it doesn't just focus on motherhood, which is often seen as like the defining role.
Yeah, it really expands our view.
It does. It really does.
It dives into what it calls like the companion,
Uh-huh.
which is the multifaceted nature of being a partner, a friend, a confidant.
Right. And, all that emotional intelligence we were just talking about really comes into play here.
It does.
The source talks about how active listening and communication are crucial for building those strong connections.
And those are often seen as strengths of women.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing and valuing that contribution.
Absolutely.
And then there's the lover,
Okay.
which, the source doesn't shy away from
Oh, I see.
talking about sexuality and intimacy.
I appreciate that about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it moves beyond those stereotypes
Yay.
and focuses on the importance of like mutual satisfaction, open communication, and safety.
It really reframes that conversation
It does.
in a way that feels really empowering.
Yeah.
And then there's the caregiver.
Oh, yeah. So many women find themselves in this role.
And the source points out how many women are in professions like nursing and midwifery.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of a natural extension of all those qualities we were talking about.
Yeah, those nurturing tendencies.
Yeah.
But it also acknowledges the challenges.
Yeah, it doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, it doesn't.
But the double burden of both professional and family caregiving.
It's a lot to handle.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's not just about, caregiving in those traditional ways. The source also talks about the warrior.
I like that.
Right? The strength and resilience that women have shown.
Yeah, and it gives some pretty inspiring examples.
Yeah, like who?
Like Harriet Tubman.
Oh, yeah.
Risking her own life to help people escape slavery.
On the Underground Railroad.
Yes.
And what about Malala?
Oh, yeah.
Standing up for education.
Even when her life was in danger.
It's incredible.
So inspiring.
And closer to home,
Yeah.
we see women breaking barriers.
And it's in so many fields.
Politics, business, science, technology.
Yeah, everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's like the source is taking a moment to celebrate.
Yeah, a victory lap.
Yeah.